Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, Randy.
Yes, Randy, we can hear you, and I'm just going to start the, YouTube has started, and I'm just going to start the rest of it shortly.
Well, here we are. I think I've done this. This is my second time being the chair of the Committee of Adjustment. So I'd like to, well, I won't try to veer off the script too much. I would like to welcome everyone to today's hearings. Before we get started, I would like to say that it's a good day to be Canadian. The Committee of Adjustment is appointed by Council to consider applications for consents and minor variances in the zoning bylaw. To the zoning bylaw. Please be advised that any applicant or agent that is in attendance in person at today's hearing for a specific application may leave the hearing once their application has been considered by the committee. Any applicant, agent, or member of the public wishing to address the committee for a specific application is reminded that presentations are limited to 10 minutes per person. So, could I please have a motion to adopt today's agenda? Member Watson and Member Sims. Would the Secretary Treasurer please read the resolution to adopt the agenda?
Moved by Member Watson, seconded by Member Sims. Be it resolved that the agenda of the Gravenhurst Committee of Adjustment meeting dated February 21st, 2025 be adopted.
All those in favor? Please vote. Oh yeah, please vote. That's something that's changed. And that's carried. Do any committee members have any comments with regard to the minutes to be adopted today? Okay. Could I have a motion to adopt the minutes for January the 17th, 2025? Member Ungerman and Member Watson. Would the Secretary Treasurer please read the resolution to adopt the minutes?
Moved by Member Ungerman, seconded by Member Watson. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Gravenhurst Committee of Adjustment meeting dated January 17th, 2025 be adopted.
Would everybody please vote? And that carries. Thank you. Moving right along. Do any committee members have a pecuniary interest in the applications being heard today? I see none. That's good. So, in accordance with Section 11 of the Committee of Adjustments procedural bylaw, I will now ask if the Secretary Treasurer has received any requests for adjournment, deferral, or withdrawal from the applicant or agent for any application on today's agenda.
Madam Chair, we have received none.
Thank you very much. So let's delve right into the public hearings. The Committee of Adjustment will today consider 2 consent applications and a minor variance application under public hearings. The Planning Act requires that a public hearing be held before the Committee of Adjustment decides whether or not to approve a consent or a minor variance. The public hearing serves 2 purposes. First, to present to the Committee of Adjustment and the public the details and background to the application, and second, to receive comments from the public and agencies before a decision is made. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be used for the hearing. The Secretary Treasurer, Adam Ager, will advise as to when, how, and to whom notice of the public hearing was circulated. The planners, Angela Jakatis, Andrew Clark, or our student planner, Matthew Armstrong, will provide any other information that is relevant to the application and summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the applicant will be provided the opportunity to make a presentation, followed by questions or presentations from the public, either in favor or against the proposal. Committee members will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, the secretary-treasurer, the planners, or anyone giving presentations. The proposed consent or variance will then be considered by the committee. If anyone from the public would like to receive a copy of the decision made on any application, please provide your name and full mailing address on one of the forms provided on the back table, at the back, or at the table at the back of the room. Would the Secretary-Treasurer please advise how, when, and to whom notices of the public were circulated?
Notice of the public hearings concerning the proposed applications were sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 60 meters of the property subject to the proposed consent or minor variance application and emailed to applicable agencies. Included with each notice was a summary of the application, a site sketch, and a key map showing the location of the property. The circulations were provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13.
Thank you, Mr. Egger. It is important to note that should committee approve any application, there is a 20-day appeal period during which time today's decision may be appealed. During this appeal period, no building permit may be issued or other work commenced. Also, in the event there is an appeal, and in order to be kept advised of a possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearing, members of the public must request to be sent a copy of committee's decision on the application. It should be noted that Bill 23 no longer allows third-party appeals. Only the applicant, the municipality, and certain public bodies will be able to appeal a minor variance or consent decision. We will now deal with the applications for consent. So, public hearing number 1. I now declare this to be a public hearing for application B010203 2025 GR for West. I will now ask the planner, Andrew Clark, to please provide any additional information that may be relevant.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. So the subject property, being 1051 Baseline Road, is located in the southwest area of the town, just north of the Severn Bridge Rural Settlement area. The property has assessed frontage on Baseline Road and Artcrisp Road, which are both municipally maintained. Artcrisp is to the south, Baseline is to the east. The property is within the rural area designation and is zoned rural. The surrounding area predominantly includes smaller residential rural lots and the Four Seasons Trailer Park, an aggregate pit, and the self-storage facility to the east of Baseline Road across from the property. And then a CN rail line also is in proximity to the property, abutting the south side of Artcrisp Road, right in that highlighted area. The property is generally flat and well vegetated. A dwelling is currently being developed in the northern portion of the property across from the general area of Four Seasons Road, which is the yellow line shown on the aerial map. A wetland feature and water course have also been identified in the south central portion of the property, in the general area that is cleared where I'm highlighting. Surrounding lands are also well vegetated, and the nearby aggregate pit and trailer park are buffered from the road and the subject property by existing tree cover. Applications have been submitted to permit the creation of 3 new lots while retaining 1 lot for a total of 4 lots intended to be for residential use. The first proposed severed lot contains the existing dwelling as seen on the site plan, while the remaining lots are vacant. The applications have been submitted concurrently with a zoning amendment application that seeks to rezone the lots to residential rural to recognize their frontages and areas, and the proposes to rezone a portion of the lands to environmental protection, which you can see in the hashed area of the map, in order to recognize a wetland feature and buffer area, and also to establish site-specific setbacks for buildings and septic systems from this wetland feature. These were included as recommendations by an environmental impact study that was prepared in support of the proposal. The study also assessed impacts to identify deer wintering area, species at risk, water quality, and fish habitat on the property, and concluded that negative environmental impacts would not be expected to occur from the proposal subject to the implementation of mitigation measures. And the zoning amendment application will be considered at the February 25th Planning Council meeting. Comments of no objection were received from the Deputy Treasurer, Infrastructure Technologist, and Deputy Fire Chief. The Chief Building Official indicated no objections, but commented that the location of septic systems will have to be assessed, specifically due to the presence of the wetland. Staff have included a condition that septic suitability is confirmed on the proposed lots to ensure that suitable footprints exist outside of identified constraints, and the EIS support submitted in support of the proposal also identified enough area for building and septic envelopes to meet required setbacks. The District of Muskoka indicated no objections, subject to the appropriate techniques being used to conserve thermal vegetative cover, deer feeding areas, and movement corridors, and also indicated species at risk may exist on the property. And staff have included conditions, the recommendations of the environmental impact study for deer wintering habitat and species at risk are implemented on the property through a consent agreement. CN provided comments of no objections, subject to an environmental easement being registered on the lands for noise and vibration emissions, for warning clauses to be included on any development and purchase and sale agreements for noise and vibration, and also for noise and vibration mitigation measures to be implemented for new construction that's within 300 meters of the identified railway right-of-way, which falls in the second and third proposed severed lots and partially the retained lot. And staff have included these conditions as part of the application. And no comments have been received from members of the public at this time. So moving into our site photos, this image looks west towards the dwelling that's currently being developed on the property, which would be on the proposed severed lot. The remainder of this lot is well vegetated outside the development footprint. This looks north up Baseline Road from the entrance of the first proposed severed lot. The mobile home park exists to the east. You can see Four Seasons Road generally in front of the lots here. And the aggregate facility also exists further northeast, which you can see are well buffered from the lot. This image looks south down Baseline Road towards where the other lots are proposed, which are on the right-hand side of the image. And you can also note the existing sight lines and vegetation along the road here. Moving south, this looks west into the location of the proposed retained lot, which is flat and well vegetated. Continuing to move south and look west, this shows the portion of the third proposed severed lot, which has some frontage on Baseline Road, but would actually likely be accessed from Artcrisp Road. We'll see that in a second. Looking east, this is the existing self-storage facility that was referenced, which is across from the location of the third proposed severed lot on Baseline Road, which also appears quite well buffered from the property. Moving southwest on Artcrisp Road now, this looks into the location of the third proposed severed lot, which is where the front lot line would be. A portion of a wetland has been identified to the rear of this property. There does appear to be a development envelope outside of this area, and staff have included a recommendation that confirmations provided suitable septic systems could be installed on the property prior to final approval. Moving west, this now looks north into the second proposed severed lot, and again, a wetland feature has been identified on a significant portion of this property, though the applicant has demonstrated building envelopes exist outside of this area, and staff have recommended that, again, confirmation of septic suitability is provided. This looks northwest up Artcrisp Road, noting the existing sight lines and vegetation, and for context, these proposed second and third severed lots are on the right-hand side. This looks southeast down Artcrisp Road now, just noting where it intersects with Baseline Road. And finally, this looks south towards the abutting railway right-of-way that abuts Artcrisp Road specifically. The proposed lots do not directly abut this area and are buffered from it, which can be seen by some of the existing vegetation. And staff are also including CN's recommendations as conditions for the application for noise and vibration. So as outlined in the accompanying report, staff are satisfied that the consent applications satisfy the requirements of the town's official plan and zoning bylaw, and recommend the applications be approved subject to conditions that will be noted on screen. These conditions include rezoning the lots to recognize their dimensions and the location and of the setbacks, the wetland feature, implementing the requirements of CN for noise and vibration, and the recommendations of the environmental impact study through a consent agreement and also site plan control, and also confirming septic suitability as referenced previously. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Do the applicant or agent have a presentation that they wish to make if they are present in person at this hearing today? Oh, Mr. McCann.
Good morning. Rick McCann, 1038 Cowbell Lane, Severn Bridge, P0E 1 Norman 0. I don't have a presentation. Andrew's covered everything adequately as usual, but I'll be here if any questions come up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public attending in person? If so, please approach the podium, press the button, give your name and mailing address to the Secretary Treasurer, and follow with your comments. I don't know how long the pause should be. I'll get it figured out by the third application. The staff's recommendation is to approve the consent application. Does committee have a motion to approve the application? Member Watson, Member Sims? I will now ask Adam Ager to please read the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and be prepared. This is a lot of words. Moved by Member Watson, seconded by Member Sims. Be it resolved, having regard to the matters prescribed under Section 5312 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, that consent be granted for application number B010203 2025 GR West, conditional on the following. Conditions 1 and 2, which can generally be summarized as the proper legal, registration, and mapping documents and fees be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. 3, cash in lieu of parkland dedication be paid to the town of Gravenhurst in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the vacant, severed, and retained lots in accordance with Bylaw 9749. 4, the subject lands be brought into conformity with the zoning bylaw by means of the severed and retained lands being rezoned to recognize their dimensions and the wetland on the property. 5, the applicant enter into a consent agreement under Section 5126 of the Planning Act with the Town of Gravenhurst in order to require the following. That site plan control will be imposed for the development on lands within 300 meters of the CN right-of-way to implement any noise and vibration mitigation measures required by CN. That site plan control will be imposed for development on lands within 120 meters of a wetland or watercourse to implement the recommendations of the environmental impact study prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc. on August 14, 2024, pertaining to fish habitat, streams, and wetlands. That the recommended mitigation measures related to the species at risk and significant wildlife habitat in the environmental impact study prepared by Riverstone Environmental Solutions, Inc., August 14, 2024, are implemented on the subject lands. That the correspondence from CN dated February 6, 2025 is implemented regarding the inclusion of a warning clause on any development agreement and agreements of purchase and sale. 6, the owner registers an environmental easement for operational noise and vibration emissions in favor of CN Rail. And 7, final approval be subject to the Town of Gravenhurst confirming that the vacant and severed lots B02 and 03 2025 are satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal, and that any problems identified by the town with any existing sewage systems be corrected to the satisfaction of the Town of Gravenhurst.
Thank you, Mr. Ager. Are there any questions or comments from the committee to the applicants, the Secretary Treasurer, the planner, or any persons who have made presentations? Member Sims.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm through you, I guess I'm asking a question to staff for some clarification on, for my understanding more than anything. The conditions where CN requires approval for noise and vibration, am I right in understanding that the noise and vibration is going to be coming from CN, not from the property owners. So is this just simply to indemnify them to noise and vibration?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the question. Essentially, part of those requirements would be to help for liability purposes, we'd assume, but it's mostly to serve as a warning for potential buyers that there will be noise and there could be noise and vibration emissions in accordance with CN's guidelines on this property. So it would make potential owners aware that, you know, there is a railway right of way abutting the lands and those impacts could occur. And yes, that's formally included through an easement, but then also warning clauses on purchase and sale agreements. And then there are other conditions relate more so to mitigation measures, again, based on their implementation guidelines to help ensure that development occurs appropriately on the lands to mitigate any impacts that could occur.
Thank you, Andrew. If I could just restate this to make sure I understand it. It's not vibration and noise coming from the severed lots that is the concern at all. All right. May I follow up on just a question concerning condition 7, I guess is the one I was interested in, is where the consent would be conditional on the town approving suitable locations for the septic systems, is what it is. And I guess I noted in the pictures that you sent along that inspection of the property, it would be difficult to discern wetlands during the inspection this year, right now. And so I'm wondering how and when would town approval actually occur?
Through you, Madam Chair. So if this condition was approved, the applicant would have 2 years to fulfill it along with the other conditions. And then consulting with our building division, it's most appropriate for them to go out and look at the property when there's no snow cover. So we'd be assuming in the spring or summertime or the fall when the applicant so chooses, and we'd usually ask for things to be marked out just to help with our building division's assessment of where the septic envelopes would be.
Gentlemen? Nothing? I have a question. Is there any issue, or is there, does this fall under the site plan agreement, the entrance permits? Like, is that something that needs to be considered with the new lots? But they're town roads, or Art Crisp is private, right? So I'm just wondering if there's a process.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question. All these lots would be subject to entrance approvals from the town's Infrastructure Services Department, and our Crisp Road is municipally maintained, or else there'd be some other policy issues with allowing lots on there. But our infrastructure technologist has provided no objection subject to them acquiring those entrance permits, and these lots do meet the frontage requirements that would normally be required for the zone that's proposed. And as seen in the photos, there doesn't appear to be clear sight line issues with achieving those approvals, but they would be required, assuming the lots were created prior to development occurring.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. So, I'm just reading the script. The chair then calls for the vote on the resolution. I guess if there's no more questions or comments, I'll call for the vote. Please vote. Okay, great. And that carries. Thank you. Okay, one down. I now declare this public hearing to be concluded. Public hearing number 2B. I now declare this to be a public hearing for application B 040506 2025 GR for Bayramoglu and Greer Bayramoglu. I will now ask the planner, Andrew Clark, to please provide any additional information that may be relevant. Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The subject property being 1025 Regshell Road is located in the central western area of the town on the north side of Regshell Road and the south side of South Muldrew Lake. The property is accessed from Regshell Road, which is municipally maintained, and also has assessed water frontage on South Muldrew Lake to the north. The property is within the rural and waterfront area designations and is zoned rural and residential waterfront. The portion of the property subject to these applications is within the rural portion. The surrounding area includes a mix of small and larger rural lots, which are generally used for residential and agricultural purposes, and smaller residential waterfront lots to the north. The southwestern portion of the property is generally flat and well vegetated, and rock outcropping was observed on the southeastern area. The property is currently developed with a detached dwelling, 2 farm storage buildings, and an accessory structure that appeared to be used as a former church, but not any longer. The private road also runs through the property, being 1029 Regshell Road, that provides access to waterfront properties on South Muldrew Lake. Surrounding lands are also well vegetated, with some abutting properties to the south and east containing cleared pasture areas, again presumably for agriculture. Applications have been submitted to permit the creation of 3 new vacant lots with frontage on Southwood Road and Regshell Road, while retaining 1 developed lot for a total of 4 residential lots. The applications have also been submitted concurrently with a zoning amendment application, which seeks to rezone the 3rd proposed severed lot, which is shown on the right-hand side of this image, to residential rural in order to recognize its frontage and area, which do not currently comply with the minimum requirements of the rural zone, but do comply with the requirements of the residential rural zone. The zoning amendment application will also be considered at the February 25th Planning Council meeting. Comments of no objection have been received from the Deputy Treasurer or the Deputy Fire Chief. The Chief Building Official indicated no objections, but that some more details would be needed on suitable septic location on the 3rd proposed severed lot due to bedrock that was observed on site and the snow cover on the property. So staff have also included a condition that septic suitability is confirmed on this lot to ensure suitable footprints exist out of any constraints. The District of Muskoka indicated no objections, subject to a 3-meter road widening, a conditional entrance permit, and an agreement pertaining to the location of wells on the property which fronts onto Southwood Road. That's the first severed lot. And staff have included these as conditions of approval. District staff also recommended that development is outside of hazardous forest areas. The applicant did have a wildland fire assessment prepared, which identified some hazardous forest types on the property, including suitable areas for development and mitigation measures. These are predominantly on the 2nd proposed severed lot, and staff have included these, that these recommendations of the study are implemented through a consent agreement. Finally, district staff did note the potential existence of species at risk on this property, and staff have included a condition for the applicant to confirm that development will be able to proceed in accordance with applicable requirements for species at risk, either by contacting the MECP who oversees those regulations or completing an environmental assessment. And no comments have been received from members of the public at this time. Moving into our site photos, this first image looks east on the retained property towards an existing farm building, which appears to be used for storage purposes. Moving and looking north, this is an existing barn on the retained lot, which did not appear to contain livestock at the time of our visit. Staff have included a condition of approval that final confirmation is provided that the proposed lots will meet setback requirements from both farm structures, which can be done through change of use permits or confirming the results in setbacks and appropriate development envelopes in accordance with the province's minimum distance separation guidelines. Moving north, this is the existing dwelling on the retained lot. And again, moving and looking north, this shows a portion of the private road on the retained property, which provides access to the northern waterfront lands, and this would not be impacted through this application. Looking south across Reg Shell Road from the retained property, this shows an abutting residential lot, which is well buffered by existing tree cover. Moving east and looking north, this is the abutting neighboring property at 1041 Reg Shell Road. The subject property kind of surrounds. This property has a small livestock barn, which you can see on the right, and one pony was also seen on the property at the time of our visit. Working with the applicant, it appears that the required setbacks from the structure can be met for the new lots. Staff are also recommending that final confirmation of the livestock on this property is provided to confirm that minimum distance separation requirements can be met. The location of the third proposed severed lot can also be seen in this image to the right. Moving further east and looking north, this looks into the third proposed severed lot where it fronts onto Reg Shell Road, which is well vegetated, and you can also note the presence of rock outcropping looking into it, which slopes upwards and extends to the rear portion. This looks northeast into the lot, again noting the upsloping topography and vegetation. Moving and facing west, this looks towards the first two proposed severed lots, which are on the right-hand side and also shows an existing residential property to the left. Looking north, this is the existing accessory structure that was referenced, which would be on the proposed second severed lot. Moving west again, this is a clear view of the second proposed severed lot, which you can see is flat and well vegetated. It has frontage on Reg Shell Road. Sorry. And continuing to move west and face north, this looks into the first proposed severed lot, which has frontage on Southwood Road. You can also note that it's relatively flat and well vegetated. The front portion of this property has been identified as moderate to high wildland fire risk due to the existing pine trees that you can see in the photo. But it has been confirmed by the applicant that development can be appropriately mitigated on this lot subject to the recommended mitigation measures. Now finally, this looks east down the frontage of the property towards the other lots, again noting existing sight lines, and you can also see where Southwood Road kind of turns into the right, right there. So as outlined in the accompanying staff report, staff are satisfied the consent application satisfies the requirements of the town's official plan and zoning bylaw and recommend the application be approved subject to the conditions that will be noted on screen. And again, these conditions include rezoning the third proposed severed lot to recognize its frontage and area, confirming that minimum distance separation requirements will be met from surrounding farm buildings, that there's adequate septic suitability in the third proposed severed lot, and that species at risk requirements can be satisfied on the new lots. And also the district's recommended conditions will be satisfied. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. My apologies. At the beginning of the meeting, I should have advised that Chair Jorgensen is Zooming in. He is in attendance. And we also have Debbie Van Den Acker, who is Zooming in for this meeting as well, or for this application. So at this time, I will ask for comments from the agent, Debbie Van Acker, who has registered to address committee electronically.
Good morning, Debbie. We're not able to hear you at this point. Can you please make sure that you press the button in the bottom center of your screen? It looks like a face icon, and when you press it,
How's that?
it'll turn red. Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, unfamiliar with this application. Thank you for that. So good morning, Chair, Committee, and staff. My name is Debbie Van Den Acker, planner at Planscape in Bracebridge, 104 Kimberley Avenue, P1L 1Z8. Andrew has presented all the details, and I support the recommendation for approval, but I am here should the committee have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Do the applicants have a presentation that they wish to make? If they are present in person at this hearing, they're not, right? We don't have any other applicants or any other representatives. Okay. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public attending? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm down here. Seeing none. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public? I've read that. Boy, oh boy, this is tough. The staff's recommendation is to approve the consent application. Does committee have a motion to approve the application? Member Sims and Member Watson. I will now ask Mr. Ager to please read the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moved by Member Sims, seconded by Member Watson. Be it resolved that having regard for the matters prescribed under Section 5312 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, that consent be granted for application number B04, 05, and 06, 2025 GR, Baramoglu and Greer Baramoglu. Again, condition 1 and 2 can generally be summarized as the proper legal registration and mapping documents and fees be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. Condition number 3, cash in lieu of parkland dedication be paid to the town of Gravenhurst in the amount of 5% of the assessed value of the severed lots in accordance with bylaw 9749. 4, the subject lands be brought into conformity with the zoning bylaw by means of severed lot number 3, B06 2025, being rezoned to residential rural, RR5, to recognize its resultant area and frontage. 5, the owners enter into a consent agreement with the town of Gravenhurst under Section 5126 of the Planning Act to implement the development recommendations for moderate to high-risk areas identified within the wildland fire assessment prepared by Zagoptra Consulting, October 8, 2024. Confirmation is provided that the minimum distance separation, MDS1 requirements are satisfied from farm buildings on the retained lands and surrounding properties. 7, final approval be subject to the town of Gravenhurst confirming severed lot 3, B06 2025 is satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal, and that any problems identified by the town with any existing sewage systems be corrected to the satisfaction of the town of Gravenhurst. 8, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, MECP, be contacted regarding potential species at risk, habitat, or an environmental impact statement, EIS, be completed. Any recommendations related to species at risk habitat are to be implemented through the appropriate process to the satisfaction of the Secretary Treasurer. 9, the applicant obtain written confirmation from the District of Muskoka that an entrance permit for severed lot 1 can be issued for access onto the district road. 10, a 3-meter road widening across the entire frontage of severed lot 1 shall be dedicated to the District of Muskoka for road widening purposes. And 11, the lands be subject to an agreement with the District Municipality of Muskoka pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended respecting the location of wells in relation to the district road.
Thank you, Mr. Ager. Are there any questions or comments from the committee to the applicants, the Secretary Treasurer, the planner, or any persons who have made presentations? Member Ungerman.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm just curious as to know whether Southwood Road, does it end at the easterly portion of what's proposed to be severed lot 1? And does the Red Shell Road continue as part of or joining into Southwood?
Through you, Madam Chair, I could pull up the site plan to show that. It's our understanding that, yes, the lot line boundary between the first and the second severed lot is kind of the delineating area where the roads change. Generally, the first severed lot's on Southwood, and the second severed lot is on Red Shell, which I think I can actually just
Does Southwood become Shell at that point?
So Southwood Road is here, and then it curves inwards and goes down. So it kind of bends around, and then Reg Shell starts here. So Southwood
And
kind of
continues
terminates-
east?
And continues east and down to the, where it terminates at the last property on the road. Yeah, does that make sense?
Well, it does, but it kind of answers where I was headed. I wondered why the recommendation for the road widening, the grant of the what is it, 3 meters, 3-meter road widening, why it's just in front of severed lot 1 and not lot 2. And are they just grabbing another 3 meters when nothing to the west of severed lot 1 has that road widening, the ability to widen the road for the lots immediately to the west of severed lot 1? I mean, is this just, once again, I've made my feelings about this known on other applications. The idea of granting 3 meters of land for a potential road widening when it may never happen doesn't ever make sense to me. I mean, if the district is going to widen the roads, then expropriate the land from everybody. Why just on this one lot when we're creating a second lot immediately to its right? We're not asking for road widening there. And I presume they don't have any right to widen the road immediately to the west of this lot. So I always struggle with this, through you, Madam Chair.
Yes, and just to, I guess, clarify that, this is a standard district condition for any lot creation proposed on a district road. And Southwood Road, shown in the green on the key map, is a district road. Reg Shell Road is a town road. So in accordance with their standard, with the district standard procedures and their road widening plans on their own roadways, they've requested that condition for the lot that fronts onto their road. But the town's infrastructure services department, for example, did not request that condition for our road, but they're two different road ownerships, and the district will ask for that on their road allowance.
So just out of curiosity, is the planning staff obliged to put forward the district's request in your recommendation? I mean, is it the planning staff's recommendation that 3 meters be expropriated from this landowner's lot? From a planning perspective, is this a condition that without which you wouldn't support this on a planning basis, or is this just because the district says, well, this is our policy, we want to grab extra land?
So it's standard procedure for us to incorporate their conditions into our recommendations because they are their conditions of their recommendation of approval, and they're an authority who can appeal the application, for example, if those conditions weren't implemented. And so we include their conditions to help prevent that from happening too in the first place. But yeah, just like any other commenting authority who has infrastructure interests, like CN, for example, and who has rights to appeal decisions when their conditions aren't satisfied, for example.
Okay.
It's funny, when I read the report, I thought of you. When I read the report, I thought of you. Member Sims? Okay. Oh, sorry, Member Watson. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to probably the applicant's agent, although I agree 100% with my colleague, I hope we're not going to let this uphold the application being approved. And I just want to verify with the applicant's agent that they're aware that the 3 meters are being offered up to the District of Muskoka.
Through the chair, we're aware, as all conditions, we know that we have to satisfy those in order for the consent to be approved. So whether we agree or disagree is immaterial. We have to comply.
Okay. Oh, Member Ungerman.
We could amend the motion by deleting that condition. The only risk is, would the district appeal our decision? And I don't know whether they would or they wouldn't, but I would be inclined to make a motion to amend the motion by deleting condition number 10. I'm
Member-
just throwing it out there.
Okay, Member Watson?
And again, I do not disagree with my colleague, and I appreciate your candor in taking our district to task. However, with my question, knowing that the applicant is aware of what's going on and they are supportive of what's happening, I know from history that the district would then appeal our decision, and we would then put the applicant behind the 8 ball. So I support you, but I absolutely support the applicant, and I wouldn't want to see them go through this turmoil.
I'm having a crazy case of deja vu. We've had this conversation before. We have. Okay, anything further, members? I will now ask the planner if there are any recommendations or comments to bring to the attention of the committee as a result of these proceedings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff recommend the application be approved subject to the conditions that have been noted.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I will call for the vote. Please vote. And that carries. Thank you. That completes the applications for consent, so we will now deal with the application for minor variance. Public hearing number 1A. I now declare this to be a public hearing for minor variance application A01-2025 GR for McKee. I will now ask the student planner, Matthew Armstrong, to please provide any additional information that may be relevant. Mr. Armstrong.
Okay. So we have a slideshow somewhere. So that's the previous application. Okay, so this property is located at 1038 Bagley Road, near the southern boundary of the municipality along the Severn River. The property is accessed from Bagley Road, which is a privately maintained road. This property is also designated as part of the waterfront area under the official plan, and the property is zoned residential waterfront RW6. The Severn River is subject to special permitting requirements also through Parks Canada, as designated by the official plan. As you can see from the air photo, the neighboring dwellings are on similar sized lots. The property is flat and sparsely vegetated, and there's substantial developments on the property. You can see a few structures are visible from this photo. So the proposal here is to recognize the location of an existing sleeping cabin, which is set back 1.7 meters from the eastern side lot line. Additionally, the proposal seeks to recognize the location of an existing shed, which is set back 2.6 meters from the eastern side lot line, where 6 meters is required. And furthermore, the proposal seeks to recognize a lot coverage of 17% within 60 meters of the shoreline, where 13% is permitted. And finally, the proposal seeks to recognize the existing dock width of 15 meters, where 6.5 meters is required. No comments of objection were received from Chief Building Official and the Deputy Treasurer and other members of those relevant teams. So now moving into the photos, these pictures are taken starting at the entrance of the property. So this is standing along the driveway looking towards the Severn River. Visible here is the rear of the dwelling and a side view of the sheds. Some of the property's vegetation is also visible close to the rear of the property and along the driveway. So here's another photo, a closer view of the shed that is closest to the driveway. You can also see part of the overhang for the carport. So this is a view of this is the innermost shed. This is not the shed that's along the lot line, but this is one of the sheds that, as a condition of this application, we are proposing that the applicant remove one of the sheds in order to bring the lot coverage, more in line with our requirements. So to the right, you can see the open. So this is the middle shed. To the right of this photo, there is the open shed. That is the shed that's along the side lot line. That's the one that's the subject of this minor variance because it's closer than the requirements. So here's the carport and sleeping cabin, which are also along the eastern side lot line. You can see the blue recycling bin and the wooden siding. Those are features of the adjacent property. And from there, it indicates the proximity of the sleeping cabin to the side lot line. Now, this is looking along the side lot line. This is the rear of the sleeping cabin. Worth noting is that there are no windows along that side of the sleeping cabin, so that, as part of our tests for minor variance, we've established that. That's a positive indicator. It means that's part of the reason we're allowing this application to be processed. Here we are looking along the river. This is a view of the T-shaped dock. You can see that the dock does not extend very far into the water, but it does have substantial width, and the dock is connected to the shore at a point just to the right of the tree. And finally, we have a view of the dwelling from the water. It is clear the property is flat and well vegetated. So a condition of approval would be to include more vegetation along the shoreline buffer in order to renaturalize the shoreline as part of the official plan's requirements. And yeah, aside from the dwelling, no structures are visible from the water, and that's also important to note. So ultimately, staff are satisfied that this proposal meets the 4 tests of a minor variance, and we would recommend that the application be approved subject to the following conditions, which include obtaining confirmation that the septic is suitably sized through a change of use building permit. We also require that the applicant receive approval from the Trent Severn Waterway for construction of the dock. Additionally, the applicant will need to enter into a site plan agreement with the town requiring additional vegetation to be planted along the shoreline buffer. And so subject to those conditions, staff would recommend that the application be approved.
Well done, Mr. Armstrong. Good for you. Do the applicant or agent have a presentation that they wish to make if they are present in person at the hearing today? Please approach the podium and press the button to make your comments.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I am Margaret McKee, and I go by Peggy. I live at 4036 Canal Road in Washago, L0K2B0. I am one of the...
Excuse me, Mrs. McKee, can you just pull the mic down a little bit closer to your mouth? Yeah, just so that they can hear us on YouTube.
Is that better? Thank you. I am one of the 3 owners of the cottage property at 1038 Bagley Road. I represent the other 2 owners of the cottage today, and we would appreciate your consideration of the minor variances which are being presented today to bring our property into compliance with the town regulations. The minor variances being requested are so we may continue to use the property as we purchased it, with having a sleep cabin, multiple sheds, a play structure, and a dock. I would just like to be clear that we have not built any of these structures. We seem to have inherited these non-compliances, and now that we have been made aware of them within the last few weeks, we are prepared to cooperate with the process that is required to bring our property into compliance. The minor variances include the sleep cabin, We purchased the cottage property February 2022 from Linda and Terry Burke. Linda and Terry Burke purchased the property October 1st, 1991 from the first property owners, Mr. and Mrs. Gale. It appears that Mr. and Mrs. Gale had building permits and a minor variance approved for a storage shed with attic space and a attached carport. The final inspection was signed off November 30th, 1999. The Burkes purchased the property with a storage shed, carport. However, it appears they changed the use of the building during their ownership. The township was not notified of the change of use. When we purchased the property, it was advertised as including a bunkie with electricity, attic storage, and a carport. There were beds in the building, which led us to believe this was a sleep cabin. We've operated a short-term rental at this cottage since 2023. During this year's short-term rental license renewal process, it was noticed on our hand-drawn site plan, which is required for the renewal, that I labeled the building as a bunkie. It was explained to me that with the town of Gravenhurst using the new renewal process now involving more departments to review the renewal application, the non-compliance was discovered. It was also confirmed for us that our RW6 zoning does allow for a sleep cabin on our property. It was explained to me that the sleep cabin building is considered compliant for the permitted building footprint land coverage requirements through the previous minor variance on file from 1992. The non-compliance is now the setback required for a sleep cabin, as that is different than what is required for the storage building. The children's play structure was also noted at the time of the planning department site visit, along with the sheds and the dock. These items were on the property when we purchased it. A hexagon wooden gazebo was also on the property. However, that has been since removed. We will make sure that the site plan on file with the town is updated accordingly. We've not had any complaints from anyone about having the play structure on the cottage property. If it is possible to keep that play structure, that would be appreciated. It is a safe and fun place for the kiddies to play and to be out of the sun if needed. The temporary buildings and sheds. The sheds and their measurements are noted on the hand-drawn site plan submitted. These sheds appear to have been installed during the Burke's ownership time, and the Township Building and Zoning Bylaw Services were not aware of them until now. The sheds are currently used to house and keep safe the seasonal machinery required for our weekly yard maintenance, riding lawnmower, push lawnmower, two-push snow blowers, shovels, rakes, various yard items. The sheds are locked, so they're kept secure from potential theft. They are sheltered from various weather conditions and any potential damage that could be caused from animals if they were left out in the open. The sheds are also kept locked to protect people from keeping them safe, from accessing them and not using them when they shouldn't. One of the sheds keeps our supply of split hardwood dry, which is used in the wood-burning stove to assist with the heating of the cottage during the fall, winter, and early spring seasons. We have a paddle boat, other seasonal items, outdoor dining table, Muskoka chairs also stored under safe cover during the winter seasons. These sheds have a practical and important need at the property. They are safe, kept in good repair, and the area around them is kept neat and tidy. The sheds are not visible from the waterfront, which does not interfere with the natural appearance for the area. The septic bed is located behind the sheds, which would make relocating them difficult. I have sent 2 emails to Mr. and Mrs. Burke, the previous owners, to see if they would confirm the date the sheds were built. I learned that if the sheds were installed prior to a zoning change of 2010, then the requirements would be based on those previous zoning regulations. If we cannot confirm the installation date of the sheds, then a minor variance as requested today is required. I have not received any communication back from the Burkes to date. The dock was included in the property purchase. I am aware that the previous owners did have a large pontoon boat. We have now been informed that the dock is longer than should be. The current dock must have been professionally installed with several large support posts being sunk deep into the riverbed. When we took possession of the property, we briefly looked into having the dock configuration changed to be shortened to allow for swimming access on that side of the waterfront. The change we were thinking of was not pursued because that was when we discovered that the dock appears to be permanently installed. This is a very heavy-duty, sturdy dock system. They have used several 6x6 support posts that have been pounded deep into the riverbed to support the dock frame. We saw 6 support posts through the snow when we looked last week, supporting the one width of the dock. It's not clear how many support posts there are in total at the moment with all the snow. The dock or deck boards that were used measure 7 inches by 2.5 inch thick. I reached out to some dock builders in the area, and their comments have been that with the use of this heavy-duty size lumber, they assume the dock was built a long time ago, saying it is an old-school way of building. I have not received any reply from the Burkes, as I have also asked them when the dock was built. The dock does not extend out into the river very far in any way that has ever interfered with the boat traffic in the area. There has never been an issue with the location or width of the dock in the past. No one has ever complained to us about the dock. We've seen plenty of fish in this area, and a small snapping turtle visits around the dock regularly. As mentioned earlier, we are requesting several minor variances, which are required to accommodate all the non-compliance issues to be able to have the structures remain on the property as they have been there and in use over many years without issues and are currently in good repair and serve important uses. To wrap up, I would like to say that this exposure to the requirements of the town of Gravenhurst concerning property ownership and any potential changes has been a huge eye-opener for us. We are willing to follow the processes required to bring our property into compliance. With learning about these processes and requirements, we will certainly be sure to consult with town officials prior to commencing any potential projects in the future. Our goal is to cooperate in a timely manner and do what is needed to bring our property into compliance. We appreciate all the guidance, patience, and assistance extended to us from the various staff members that we have engaged with. Everyone has been very helpful and knowledgeable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKee. It's good to know that we have good staff. Are there any questions or comments from members of the public attending in person? If so, please approach the podium, press the button, give your name and mailing address to the Secretary Treasurer, and follow with your comments. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Daryl Hersix. I reside at 1038 Bagley Road, neighboring 1040. My official address is 33 Colonial, Grimsby, Ontario, L3M5H3. So I'm up at the cottage every Thursday afternoon till Tuesdays, Mondays, so planning my retirement there, so morphing over that way. One thing, I don't think it's a minor variance. I think it's a major variance, that 1.7 meters. That structure used to be a garage, and when Terry Burke owned it, it was a garage with a couple beds in for his granddaughters. So Ms. McKee bought the property with all intentions to have it as an Airbnb, which she operated for months without a license, and you guys granted a license for it. She assumed that the garage was deemed conforming bedroom space. So that I believe she's challenging that now to get that put forward so that she can have her 12 to 14 people there on a daily basis. That really impacts the noise variance to me. I have multiple complaints that are documented to Michael Briggs in bylaw that he's addressed. The window's quite large. It's a 2x6 construction with R12 So there's not a lot of sound barrier there, and the sound really breaches my property because everybody comes there to party. And it's been a big issue with partying, night sky lighting. We've left our property to go out while people have beer pong competitions, weddings, 3 weddings there last year. It's a commercial habitat in a residential area, 75-foot lots with not a lot of trees to absorb sound. So that's one of my issues there, that it's really not a minor variance. Problem with the sheds and all that, keeps things tidy, keeps things out from underneath tarps. I don't have a problem with sheds or docks or things like that. So right now, the STR license, they're not in compliance with it. Based on this recent review of the applicant's STR license application revealed the matters are non-compliant with the zoning bylaw, although they continue to run a licensed Airbnb. So I don't know how that continues while they're not in compliance. So had problems with the septic in April. Their septic was oozing, and I believe, I'm no engineer, I believe it's because the 12 to 14 people that reside there on a daily basis are overtaxing the septic system. And I had to put sand fill in on top between my bed and their bed to mitigate effluent coming up and breaching to the river. Advised Craig, the responsible party, key holder, and partner of Peggy, that they should immediately pump their septic tank to allow the hill to start to absorb some water so that it's not breaching above ground, which he did. So he acknowledged that there's a problem with that. So granting that that building permit to change that garage to sleeping quarters will add 2 more bedrooms, if not maybe 3 bedrooms to that house, which increases noise and doesn't, and there's nothing to mitigate that noise, whereas a 6-meter lot line would. Both sides, it would definitely mitigate that, but that's not what's going to happen there. Their intention for their property was to purchase it as an Airbnb, and they've misrepresented themselves, saying they just want it as a family cottage, and now they're facing facts that they have to bring the property to code to fulfill Airbnb's requirement and also the town of Gravenhurst. I have multiple videos and texts for noise complaints and things like that. It's really taken away my quiet enjoyment of my property. And I believe granting the variance will continue to take away my lawful enjoyment of a quiet, peaceful property, as it is so close to the property line. I would have more slideshows or things, but I think due to the mail issues with snow and all that, I just received the document yesterday in my mail. So I'm a little fragmented on that. What else do we have here? One moment, Madam Chair. So initially, I don't know why the carport was not identified by Gravenhurst when she did apply for the short-term rental license. And maybe that was overlooked or just misrepresented by someone. I don't know. I can't speculate on that, but that is the problem, the overpopulation of that lot. There are several Airbnbs down the way which there are no complaints from. They run them differently, 7-day rentals, certain ages and things like that. Like I said, I've had to leave my property because of noise disruptions. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. A lot of it are documented with Michael Briggs, but I don't believe this is a minor variance. I believe this is a major variance that will have a large impact on my property value, and my family's value. Thank you for your time, Council. Chair.
Thank you very much. So I think that we can deal with minor and major variances today, but short-term rentals is a different time and place. So I will carry on with the meeting here. The staff's recommendation is to approve the minor variance application. Does committee have a motion to approve the application? Okay. Get it on the table? Okay. Okay. Member Ungerman and Watson. I will now ask Mr. Ager to please read the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moved by Member Ungerman, seconded by Member Watson. Be it resolved that application number A01-2025 McKee be approved and that the necessary notice of decision be prepared conditional upon Condition 1, the applicants obtain confirmation that the septic is suitably sized through a change of use building permit. Condition 2, the applicants obtain building permit and the appropriate approvals from the Trent Severn Waterway. And Condition 3, the applicant enter into a site plan agreement with the town requiring additional vegetation within the shoreline buffer area in conformity with the official plan.
Okay. Committee, are there questions or comments? Who wants to go first? Member Ungerman.
Through you, Madam Chair. If I understand the delegates' concerns, it's basically related to the sleeping cabin. I don't think there was an issue with the shed. And I'm concerned if the impact of the operations, if I can use that term, on this property are so significant that the neighbors coming to express his concerns, I think we need to take those concerns legitimately and consider them seriously. If some of the concerns he has can be allayed by maybe not permitting the sleeping cabin, I think I would support that amendment to the motion. I don't see, I didn't really hear a problem with the shed, and I don't think I heard that much of a problem with the dock, although I admit my hearing's not great. But, so subject to what my colleagues are thinking, I might be inclined not to approve the setback for the sleeping cabin, but I don't know that I have a real problem with the other ones. It's the recognition of the location of the existing sleeping cabin, which would require a variance of 4.3 meters. I'm interested to hear what the others have to say.
Thank you. Who'd like to go next? Oh, Mr. Jorgensen.
There, I have to turn my microphone on. Is that better?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. First of all, just like confirmation that a sleeping cabin is permitted on this property, and all we're really talking about is the setback of, I think it's 1.7 meters rather than the 6 meters, and just confirmation of that first, if I may.
Through you, Madam Chair. A sleeping cabin is permitted on this property. The issue is the side yard setback.
Okay, thank you. So we've also heard from the member of the public that the septic system appears to be leaking effluent, which is never permitted. And so the condition of determining whether the septic system is suitably sized, I think, has already been determined, because if it's leaking, it's not suitably sized, or certainly not operating properly. So does the condition that says it's suitably sized permit replacement then of that septic system as the condition? Because the wording to me says confirmation that it's suitably sized, and if the answer is no, then what? I guess that's my question.
Ms. Chikatis.
Thank you. Through you, the condition is worded so that if it's not suitably sized, then the variance isn't valid. So in order for it to be, for the variance, if approved, to be valid, the septic would either have to be upgraded, replaced, et cetera. A change of use permit to allow additional habitable space would never be issued in the absence of confirmation of suitable septic capacity. And sorry, may I just add, although I'm not a septic expert, the Ontario Building Code determines the size based on number of bedrooms, number of plumbing fixtures, and floor area. So there are, it is that combination of factors which determines the size of the septic tank and bed.
Okay, thank you. Member Jorgensen?
Yes, that's fine for now, thanks.
Okay. Member Sims?
The way that this has come about is a bit interesting. We read the application. This was provided to us earlier, and we're aware of what the conditions were, or what the situation was. And then when we read the staff report more recently, we realized that some concessions were being sought, asked for, and which I found, for me was really critical, because just giving a blanket approval for the layout would not have sat well with me, for my own personal opinion. I think I probably would have gone further, and so I'm pleased that the discussion has gone a little further. Just as my colleague, Member Ungerman, has described, it doesn't appear that the dock is a concern. And I actually would agree with that, because it's contingent upon approval by the Severn, and if it's and if their approval and it's been there for many years, I guess I'm okay with that as well. The sleeping cabin is not so much. But before I leave the dock, I'm sorry if I could just make one comment that the details provided in it's not the key map. What's the other one called? Site plan. Shows a 6-inch wide dock, and I suspect that it's not a 6-inch wide, it's a 6-foot wide dock. So that's a little typo, if I could just mention. I live next door to a property that is used on Airbnb, and you'd be surprised how I appreciate and hear every one of those comments of concerns. Noise, overpopulation, and concern for septic system. Oh, now I know this, Madam Chair, I know that this is a short-term rental thing, but I live that too. And I think if we have the opportunity here today to correct what I think is simply an overuse system, this is money grabbing by putting beds where people can go, I think we should correct that. And this would have long-term implications to actually improve the situation in the neighborhood. I'm, the notion that the septic system is already not functioning appropriately is shocking. And I think we have a solution to it by removing some of the bedding. And while the owners are here, the operators, that I should call it, I think they need to hear that they need to cut back on the number of beds that are permitted and start appreciating that they're part of a community and that the guests that arrive there have a negative impact on the community. So I'm not in support of this if we don't amend it to remove the approval of the sleeping cabin.
Okay, Member Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wow, what a dilemma. And really, it isn't. And we're dealing with two separate issues here. And one, the owners of the property, I mean, I would have gone back and had a long discussion with the lawyer that put this real estate deal together and told you that all these buildings on the property were legal and conforming. But that's another issue that you'll have to deal with. I understand the complaint that has been put forth in regards to the short-term rentals, but we still have to separate the two of them. And we can easily separate them by taking a look at the variance in front of us and say the beds can be given if the septic system is adequate. On the other hand, to protect the neighbors, somebody has to come up with a moral standard and say, what are we going to allow on this property and how can we manage it? Because I did hear, and your name again, sir? Daryl. I did hear Daryl mention about Airbnbs down the way and that there was no problems with those Airbnbs. Is that correct? That's correct. So it's not that I'm going to say that we have a delinquent landlord that's having people at this property, but it has to be managed. It has to be policed. And they're the ones that are doing the renting. They're the ones that have to police this property. I get the fact that we have people that own property on our lakes in Muskoka, and they want to retire here. They want to enjoy their property, and somebody has put their property up beside them, and some big conglomerates come in and said, okay, we can make $10,000 a week here, so we're going to rent it out. And it destroys what Muskoka was all about and what we deemed as living here or recreating here in our lives. So as a minor variance, from my standpoint, this is doable. But as a moral issue with renting it out and having, and I can tell you I'm a little bit of an expert when it comes to weddings. And yes, we may have a property that has, I don't know, 6 beds, so let's say 12 people show up. But if they're using it as a wedding venue and there's 45 people or 65 people showing up to party, that's not conducive to any septic system unless it's a commercial property. So I do support the variance. However, I don't support the means and what they're using the property for. And I think there's got to be some policing done and some standards set with the town on how this property gets used. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Watson. I did see that Member Jorgensen is on board. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I think we have to be careful here because, and I think staff can confirm this. You know, we're not dealing with the short-term rental issue per se, but I guess we are looking at we have to determine the impact of having that sleeping cabin, which is permitted, within 1.7 meters rather than the required 6 meters setback. So if we were to remove the variance for the 1.7 meter, then the owner would have a choice of moving the structure, which would not reduce the number of people that could stay at the property and use that sleeping cabin, or not use it as a sleeping cabin. Those are their two choices, because as a storage structure, it's my understanding, I think, that the 1.7 meters is permitted for the carport and storage, and staff could probably, I'd ask staff to confirm that. But that seems to me to be the two options. So staff have suggested to us, I think, that the 1.7 meter setback does not impact the neighboring property because there's no windows along that, as it was given as an example. But the adjacent property owner seems to indicate that perhaps the 1.7 meters would have an impact on his enjoyment of his property. So I think that's the issue we're faced with the sleeping cabin. We have to realize that a sleeping cabin is permitted on the property, and all we're looking at is that setback. The use of the property is still residential, if it's short-term rental for the most part. That's the way it's been interpreted. And some of the issues may be better dealt with as revisions to our short-term rental bylaw when we do give another look at that. But those are my comments. I think that we have to only be looking at that setback of the sleeping cabin rather than the Airbnb or short-term rental use of the property. And I think we do have to be careful to separate the two.
Thank you, Member Ungerman. I'm going to give Member Jorgensen. Hang on, Member Ungerman. I'm going to give Ms. Jakatis an opportunity to respond. Can I just add to Member Jorgensen's comments? If it's recommended in the report that a shed be removed, so if a shed's removed and the cabin is moved, the sleeping cabin is moved, is that compliant?
Thank you. So in the property history, it was outlined, and I know there's a lot of information, so just to point out that a building that is not a sleeping cabin, so a detached garage and carport, is permitted to be 2.4 meters from the lot line, not 1.7 meters. So even the location of that structure as a storage building is currently non-compliant, so would have to be recognized if committee so chooses. Sorry, Madam Chair, your question.
So it's recommended in the report that one of the sheds be removed.
Right.
So does that give more room for the sleeping cabin if it's shifted?
So I wouldn't, thank you for the question. I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the applicant, but based on the site visit, I would suggest that it would be more of it wouldn't be able to use that same structure and move it. I would suggest, not professing to be an expert in that, but I don't think that it would be possible to move it. To your point, though, there is, I think, room on the property in another location for a sleeping cabin with the removal of structures and considering lot coverage. One other thing I would just point out, as has been recommended, that part of the, should committee choose to approve the application, part of the recommendation is a site plan to improve the shoreline vegetation. Another consideration for committee, just consideration only, would be planting of trees along that lot line.
Member Ungerman.
Through you, Madam Chair, to my colleagues, I think we should not lose sight of one variance that is required, and that is the coverage. I mean, they're 6.3% over coverage. So allowed 13, they're over 19. The shed doesn't seem to be a problem, although the planning staff said maybe remove the shed, one of the sheds, that'll help alleviate the coverage issue. But the shed's not creating any problem for the neighborhood. It's the sleeping cabin. So if, I think we can help this application, or not this application, this property work its way through the application. If we did hold back approval for the sleeping cabin variance, maybe not worry about the shed, and get the coverage back in line with what it's supposed to be. And by doing that, we're also solving indirectly the problem with the noise and the people, which, I mean, maybe they can rebuild the shed, rebuild the sleeping cabin, but then do it in a manner that is more in compliance with the bylaw, which means it's going to be smaller, which means it's going to be less beds. So we're coming at the problem maybe a roundabout way, but we may be solving the problem and doing it in a way which sort of falls within our mandate, rather than dealing with the issue of short-term rentals or Airbnbs, which I think we have to be careful that we don't step into that area because it's just not our jurisdiction. So I would be, again, supporting the idea that we do not approve the sleeping cabin setback. I'm neither here nor there about a shed because it's not visible to anybody and it is just storage. But I think that may be the way we sort of deal with this issue. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Ungerman. Is it appropriate then, Mr. Ager, for us to take a minor recess and rejig the motion?
Through you, Madam Chair, two things. One, we have read the resolution already as prepared, so it is out there. In saying that, prior to making any sort of amendment, I believe staff would like a clear understanding of what the committee wishes to amend.
Mr. Watson.
Through you to Mr. Ager. If we don't approve this amendment as you have read, what happens?
So, through you, Madam Chair, to Member Watson, so you're suggesting if you just choose to not approve the variance as proposed, then the property would continue to not be in compliance with zoning bylaw, so they would go back to they'd have to meet all the zoning provisions. You would then not be granting the dock or the additional coverage, so those structures would all have to be removed. And then it would be a bylaw enforcement issue at that point. Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, in addition to that, too, the applicant also has the right to appeal. So there is that piece as well. So
Mr. Jorgensen has some further comment.
And just to confirm as well along the same lines, if simply the setback for the sleeping cabin, if that, if the motion were amended to remove that condition, then similarly, because that sleeping cabin, or if it reverts to its original use as a storage structure, the storage structure would still not comply, and so it would have to be removed or set back, I think, as Ms. Jakatis said, 2.4 meters rather than the existing 1.7. So it would have to be removed as well. That's correct? If the rest of the amendments were approved.
thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Member Jorgensen, or an option for committee is recognizing the location of it as only being a shed for storage purposes. So at that setback. So the building that's currently being used as a sleeping cabin, but was originally intended to as a shed, as we heard Mr. Caddis mentioned, it should be at 2.4, but it's at 1.7 as a shed. So committee does have the option to recognize it at 1.7 for a shed, not as a sleeping cabin.
Member Ungerman?
Perhaps it would work if I made a motion to amend the motion to approve this by deleting, this is a little loosely way of putting it, bullet 1 and bullet 3. So that what would be before us is a motion to approve bullet number 2 and bullet number 4. And I'm reading under the purposes section. So I think, I don't. Sure, yeah. I think we're concerned with, at least from the sounds of our discussion, we're concerned with approving bullet number 1, which would be to recognize the location of these as a sleeping cabin. And I think we're concerned with bullet number 3, which is the gross floor area coverage. So if we eliminate those two bullets from the motion, I personally don't have really a problem with the shed, and I don't have a problem with the dock. So at least the applicants are getting something now, and then they are just going to have to deal with the two variances that we're not comfortable approving, from what I'm gathering.
Would that not be covered by way of the site plan, though? Okay, Ms. Chikatis, and then I'll give Ms. Chikatis an opportunity to speak, and then Member Jorgensen.
The site plan wouldn't override the wording of the decision.
Member Jorgensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, I think Mr. Ager gave us an alternate for the sleeping cabin setback to change the wording to say a storage, the carport / storage building to be set back 1.7 meters, which would basically eliminate the sleeping cabin as a sleeping cabin. Is my sense of it. Is that, does staff concur with that, that if we change that wording for the first item to reference and delete the septic system references in that first line, because it was a storage structure, the septic issue doesn't apply. However, I mean, that does not negate the need from a building department point of view if we've heard that the septic system is not functioning properly. That's again a different issue, I think. But by changing the wording, we would then permit the storage structure to be at 1.7 meters setback, and it would not be permitted then as a sleeping cabin is my thought, and I'm wondering if staff can comment on that.
Ms. Jakatis.
Thank you. That is correct, that is an option as well to recognize the location of that structure as a storage building setback 1.7 meters from the lot line.
Member Ungerman.
Madam Chair, I think we have to deal with the application that's before us. It's for approval of a sleeping cabin. I don't think we should be approving something that wasn't applied for. So if they want to come back and reapply for something else, they have to ask for the sleeping cabin to be converted to a storage shed. But right now, what is before us is the application was submitted in order to recognize the location of the existing sleeping cabin, not to recognize the location of the existing storage shed. So I think we're sort of treading on, water if we try to change what their application is. We either approve this application vis-a-vis the sleeping cabin, or we don't approve it. I don't think it's within our ability to just change the word sleeping cabin to storage shed. That's just my opinion. I might be wrong, but I'm not comfortable with that.
Thank you. Member Jorgensen.
I'm just trying to clarify as well then. My understanding is it is not a sleeping cabin because there has not been a change of use building permit. The building permit was for a storage structure, so it is not a sleeping cabin. Am I correct with that?
Ms. Jakatis.
Thank you. It is being used illegally as a sleeping cabin. There was a permit issued for a carport / garage, and that with a 2.4 meter setback, and the survey information, later survey information confirmed that the setback is actually 1.7 meters.
Okay.
Sorry, if I may follow up, Madam Chair. So by saying it's being illegally used as a sleeping cabin, it is not a sleeping cabin, was my point. It is a shed. So Mr. Ungerman's concerned that we're changing, by changing that wording, it was not what was applied for. However, it's not a sleeping cabin until it's designated in the by a building permit, change of use building permit, to be a sleeping cabin. Is that correct thinking?
Yes, that is correct.
I'm sorry, just one more point. So if we approve it as a sleeping cabin, it still doesn't make it a sleeping cabin until the change of use permit. So it's not a sleeping cabin, period.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jorgensen. Ms. McKee, I did see your hand up in the gallery. Unfortunately, it's not a back and forth. We've heard your comments, and we have to hammer it out up here. So I did see your hand. I wanted you to know that I acknowledge you. I, quite frankly, don't know how to proceed. Because I think that there are some good recommendations that we can approve, but there are some issues that need to be dealt with. I just don't know how to deal with them. Member Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Ager. So, Committee Member Jorgensen brought up the point that this is not a sleeping cabin. This is on the books as a storage shed. And that is the issue. We've said it's a sleeping cabin, but really, structurally, it's a shed. It's always been a shed, but somebody's taken out the tools and put a couple beds in there, and now we're calling it a sleeping cabin. So in order for us, I don't have a problem with the variance of it as a shed, as a structure. How do we get there? And how do we get through this as recognizing the variance, 1.7 meters, as a shed, which was originally the structure?
Thank you. Member Chair, or Chair Strang, through you to Member Watson. Okay, I think we're clear on that, and staff can adjust the resolution and motion accordingly. I guess also Member Ungerman did bring up another bullet though about the lot coverage, so I guess staff would still just need a clear understanding of what the wish of this committee is as it relates to the lot coverage relief, if that's to be looked at as well.
Go ahead, sir.
So, and further to that, if we look at the structure, and I agree with Committee Member Ungerman that the lot coverage is an issue, that the variance for the shed, which we seem to have 2 beds in it and are calling it a sleeping cabin, goes back to being a shed, and we ask for the removal of the outer units that would help reduce the lot coverage percentage. Mr. Ungerman, are we getting close?
I agree. Whether we call it a sleeping cabin or a shed, if we don't approve that variance, we're bringing that back in or closer to compliance or force it to comply with the setback. But the intended rather than unintended consequence, the intended consequence is that we get probably closer on bullet number 3. So I don't see any reason, whether you want to call it a shed or, as the applicant's calling it, a sleeping cabin, why approve it? If we don't approve it, we're going to do better on bullet 3 on the coverage.
Mr. Ager.
Thank you. Through you, the reality is that the structure has a building permit. There are other structures on the property that don't have building permits.
Okay, so
But-
it's legal nonconforming.
That's correct. So, through you again, Madam Chair, if it's the wish of the committee to limit lot coverage, the clearest path forward would be the structures that have not obtained permits, which complicates this further.
Member Jorgensen.
Thanks again. Through you, Madam Chair, so if we don't, I think Mr. Ungerman was suggesting just deleting the reference to the sleep, that item number 1 with the 1.7 meter setback. The consequence of that, the intended consequence of that, as he suggested, I think, would be removal of that structure, because even though it has a building permit, it was not built according to what is permitted. So that the storage structure that is being used illegally as a sleeping cabin would have to be altered to meet the 2.4 meter setback if it was to stay.
So we have a motion on the floor. Okay. Okay, so let's amend it.
I suggest that we amend it by deleting bullet 1 and 3. That way, we address the applicant's other two, and they can come back and bring another application in some other form if they want to. But in the meantime, we've sort of solved our concerns and at the same time given them what they requested with matters that aren't concerning to us. Can we do that?
Okay.
Can't, if there's a seconder.
Member Sims and then Member Jorgensen.
I'm in support of an amendment if we can, if this would solve the problem and allow us to move forward. But if I could just put a concern is that just removing number 1 would eliminate the condition of confirmation of the septic system being appropriately sized, because that, I believe, has to be retained.
That can remain.
Through you, Madam Chair, if the committee still has current concerns as it relates to septic, they could still leave in a septic condition.
Member Jorgensen?
I'm concerned about, well, I guess I'm speaking to the proposed amendment, because I don't know that we have an amendment on the floor, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm concerned that if we delete items 1 and 3 as it's being suggested, then we still have an enforcement issue with the setback of the storage building, and we still have a enforcement issue with the overall lot coverage that I think we can deal with here. I would suggest that all we need, like I'm in favor of reducing the lot coverage as suggested, and I'm in favor of changing the wording of the sleeping cabin to the storage unit to 1.7 to allow it to remain with the 1.7 meter setback as a storage building, not as a sleeping cabin.
Okay, so I think that we've given staff enough information to change the wording. Ms. McKee, are you understanding everything that's gone on here? Okay. Okay, so I think that it's appropriate to take a 5-minute recess to collect the discussion, and then we'll go forward from there.
If we can just, I'd put a motion on the table to amend the motion that's on the table. I think technically there should be a seconder if it's going to be part of, did you? Okay.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, Madam Chair, on screen, staff have prepared a amended resolution. And I'll read the amended resolution first, because this is now changed. You'll see originally before it talked about a change of use permit, and now condition 1 specifically just says that the applicants obtain confirmation that the septic is suitably sized to the satisfaction of the town of Gravenhurst. So the change there is the removal of the acknowledgement of the change of use permit in the sleeping cabin. The other 2 conditions remain the same, the building permit from the Trent Severn Waterway, and that the site plan agreement still happen. You'll also notice the wording here specifically says the approved and necessary notice of decision be prepared. And so now we're just going to show on screen what the notice of decision looks like. And so here is the notice of decision. So you'll see the 4 pieces of relief. So a minimum setback of 1.7 meters for the eastern side lot line for a carport/garage in its current location. And it's worth mentioning that is the specific wording of the building permit that was issued for that structure. Then the minimum setback of 2.6 meters for the eastern side lot line of the shed, a maximum lot coverage of 17% within 60 meters of the shoreline, and then the maximum dock width of 15 meters in its current location. And again, there you see the 3 conditions that were previously on screen. So again, septic suitability to the satisfaction of the town of Gravenhurst, building permit, and the appropriate approvals from Trent Severn Waterway, and that the applicant enter into a site plan agreement. So staff feel they have heard what this committee said and amended this accordingly, and I guess we do need a mover and a seconder and an understanding if that's accurately reflective of the changes that were requested.
Member Watson, move, and seconded. Member Ungerman, okay. Do you want to reread it again?
Yeah.
Member Jorgensen, just one moment while Mr. Ager rereads.
Okay. Moved by Member Watson, seconded by Member Ungerman. Be it resolved that application number A01 2025 GR McKee be approved and that the necessary notice of decision be prepared conditional upon the applicants obtain confirmation that the septic is suitably sized to the satisfaction of the town of Gravenhurst. 2, the applicants obtain a building permit and the appropriate approvals from the Trent Severn Waterway. And 3, the applicant enter into a site plan agreement with the town requiring additional vegetation within the shoreline buffer area in conformity with the official plan. And again, the necessary notice of decision was what we saw previously on screen with those changes as committee had requested.
Sorry, Member Jorgensen did have his hand up, and then I'll go to you, Member Sims.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think we had a motion on the floor that procedurally I think we either have to amend or withdraw or something before this one can come forward.
I believe we amended before the break.
Did we didn't vote on a motion to amend.
No, we had the suggestion of amendment. We didn't have a mover and a seconder before the break. So now we have an amendment.
So I still think we need to have a motion to amend the original motion to replace it with this, perhaps, would be
Okay, I
a way
understand.
to do that, right?
So it was Member Watson and Member Ungerman that motioned to amend. Okay, so and can we vote to amend? Please, Ms. Fleming.
I think what would happen then we would replace the original motion with this motion, and then we would have to vote on the new motion separately, right?
Actually, I think if we want to be consistent, I think I made the motion to amend the motion that was on the table, and Member Watson, I think, seconded it. So what you've done is just gone back and, finalized the wording of it. So really, this motion that we're about to vote on, I think probably is the motion that I moved to amend the original motion. And if we approve the amended motion, that's the end of it.
So can we vote on the amended motion? Questions or comments? Member Sims.
Okay, so just, I think this is the discussion of the amended motion. Am I in the right sequence? I would just ask, through you, Madam Chair, could we just clarify that the changes that have been made will address the major concerns that we've been talking about? Because I just want to make sure that the new wording captures the major concerns. So I'd seek comments perhaps from either Adam or Angela.
Ms. Chikatis?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So the amended decision would permit the existing garage/carport to remain in its current location as a storage building, not as habitable space. It would permit the dock to remain subject to the required approvals from the Trent Severn Waterway and the town. It would require removal of a shed to be to reduce the existing lot coverage on the property to a maximum of 70%. And it would permit with that said, it would recognize the setback of the shed, so it gives the applicant flexibility to as to which shed is removed. It would also require the site plan agreement to correctly identify all of the existing structures on the property and to require additional shoreline vegetation. And it would also require confirmation that the septic is adequate for the habitable space that is there in being the dwelling.
Member Jorgensen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hate to belabor this, but I want to make sure we follow procedure properly so that what we're passing is done the right way. And I think the problem is we had the original motion on the floor that Mr. Ager read. We had a motion to amend that we didn't vote on. So I think we need to have a motion to amend the original motion that we vote on to approve the amended motion. And then we have to vote on that original motion as amended, which is the one that's being brought forward, because we still have the original motion on the floor. So I don't want to, I just don't want to create a situation where our decision-making is flawed.
Okay, so Ms. Fleming can create a motion.
Well, a vote.
A vote, excuse me, to amend the motion. Okay. Okay, please vote. And that carries. Okay, so now we'll vote on the amended motion. Please vote. And that carries. Thank you. I now declare this public hearing to be concluded. The next Committee of Adjustment meeting is on Friday, March the 21st of this year. As there is no further business noted on the agenda, can we please have a motion to adjourn this hearing? Member Watson and Member Sims. I now declare this hearing to be adjourned at 11:16 a.m. Thank you, everyone. That was, it never